All right. Distance Learning Assignment 2, Chapter 10, Lesson 1. We are going to introduce you to the idea of political parties, give you some basics on them, and give you some history about the political parties that are in the United States today. All right, Abigail, what are the two main political parties in the United States?
Democrat and Republican.
There are two main political parties in the United States today, Democratic Party and Republican Party. Why do we have political parties?
I guess to separate political beliefs on the different ends of the spectrum.
Yes, one of the reasons why we have political parties is people want to join a group that believes the same thing they do. So it kind of organizes people's thoughts. You know what you believe in, you look to a party that agrees with the things you agree with, and you join your political party. What else do political parties do?
Voting. For voting, you can identify as one of the parties.
You identify with the parties. What do the party organizations give to people and candidates practically? I'm going to be a politician. I want to run for president.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I need to pick a party?
So you can have a bigger chance of getting the votes from that party?
Absolutely. I want to get the party's votes, and more than that, to get those votes, I get that party's
money. Yeah.
Money and organization. If I say I'm Steve Biankowski of the Civics Party, does anybody know the Civics Party? Does anybody care about the Civics Party? Does the Civics Party have money and people to work for it? No. But if I say I'm a Republican, I have the entire weight of the Republican Party potentially backing me with people, money, organization, etc. All right, cool. So we have a two-party system. Whether that's good or bad, that's up to you to think about. We have two main political parties. Now we have numerous third parties, which we're going to discuss. But Abigail, in America, do people really vote for third parties?
Not really.
No, the majority of Americans identify with one of the two major parties, Democrats or Republicans. So we have a two-party system. That is not something other countries have. Some countries have 3, 4, 7, 12, and then that forces those parties to work together. We have two parties. You'll hear our system called a two-party system. Who's that?
That is George Washington.
It is George Washington, the father of our country and our first president. Abby, what party did George Washington belong to?
Republican?
No. George Washington would say he belongs to no party. As a matter of fact, George Washington warned our country against parties. And you see the quote there. Political parties over time, or what are they going to do? They're going to attract cunning, ambitious and unprincipled men. What does unprincipled mean?
Like no morals?
You have no morals. You don't believe anything. Washington was convinced that parties were bad, that you would just use a party to become powerful, that you'd care about party stuff and not for the good of the whole country. So Washington and a lot of early American politicians said, don't have parties, they're bad. But what did America do?
Created parties.
It immediately almost created parties. And you'll see as soon as George Washington leaves after how many terms as president?
2?
2 terms as president, people will start kicking these parties into life big time. But really, the segregation into parties start as early as the Constitution. You're going to see people classify themselves as Federalists, who supported the Constitution, Alexander Hamilton, and Anti-Federalists, who had problems with the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson. The Constitution does not mention political parties at all. So the blueprint of our government, the structure of our government, our operating system does not mention political parties. So political parties are something people kind of strapped on top of the Constitution. But if you read those 7,500 words, you're not going to find political parties mentioned. All right? Two main parties really come up following Hamilton on one side and Jefferson on the other. Hamilton famously pro-Constitution, pro-strong central government, Federalists. The Federalists believed if we did not have a strong central national government, we would fall apart, just like we were under the Articles of Confederation. Hamilton would argue that without a strong central government, we couldn't tax, we couldn't have a banking system, we couldn't have a strong military to defend us against Great Britain coming back, France or Spain, who were still on our continent. So the Federalists believed in a strong central government. The Anti-Federalists, Jeffersonians, believed that strong central government was a threat to liberty. We talked about it before. We did not want to have George Washington as president becoming King George I of America. The Anti-Federalists believed that the biggest threat to your liberty was your own government. That your government would start by taxing you, then it would start telling you what to do, then it would take the vote and power away from you, and then you're basically just following a king. So Jefferson and the Anti-Federalists were very suspicious of a strong central government. So the two parties, as soon as we start coming up with this Constitution, start coming into being. The Federalist Party, again, under Hamilton, and these Anti-Federalists would come together, and that party will become, confusingly enough, the Democratic Republicans. So we're going to see those two terms will split over time. So, of course, Hamilton leads the Federalists. The Federalists are the ones concerned about creating a strong national government. Here, Adams is basically saying, if you don't have a government that is not strong enough to protect you from, like, Great Britain again, you're going to be a slave again, all right? So you need that strong taxation. You need that strong banking system. You need that strong military. You need that strong central government. You can't be 13 states kind of on your own, farming and doing your own thing. You need that strong central government. Jefferson disagreed entirely. Jefferson's idea of the United States was 13 different states kind of doing their own thing, gentlemen farmers with government small and tiny and just handling things like foreign policy. Jefferson believed we shouldn't have an army. Jefferson believed we shouldn't have a navy. He saw those as expensive and something that would only threaten our liberty. If you give the central government an army, what's it going to do? It's eventually going to march to your front door and start taking away your rights.
So,
Ma'am.
what did the Anti-Federalists think about, like, war?
The Anti-Federalists, like Jefferson, would say if a war ever came up, states would create their own state militias who would fight the bad guy.
With what money?
Exactly. Which is why we had such trouble in the Revolution. If you remember, in the Revolution, we were governed under the Articles of Confederation. Each state did its own thing, basically. So George Washington would be in the field with his army, starving to death, freezing at Valley Forge. And he'd send a message to Congress, and the message would be, send me money so I could buy stuff and send me troops. And Congress would say, well, yeah, Virginia doesn't want to send you anything. And Rhode Island are taking its troops back because they want them in the state of Rhode Island. In Pennsylvania, they agreed to send money, but this much instead of this much. So Washington was continuously pulling his hair out under that white wig because there was no strong central government. The states did their own thing. Jefferson said, well, we won, didn't we? It's good enough. Hamilton, who fought the war side by side to George Washington, said, no way. We were basically lucky to win this thing. We almost lost, and frankly, Hamilton would probably say, we only won because France got involved. So Hamilton would argue that if we have to defend this country, we're going to have to do it with a strong army and a navy and a strong central government. Jefferson, the states will form militias. The spirit of the American people will get together. We'd all grab our muskets and we'd go and fight the bad guys, the invaders, whoever it is, Great Britain or France, and we'd somehow win, just like we did in the Revolution.
So they didn't want any taxing at all, or just very little?
Very limited taxes, and most of the taxation would come from the states. The federal government would have limited and maybe no taxing power. The states would take care of taxing their own citizens. And if the central government needed money, which again, Jefferson didn't want the central government to have money because it would be too powerful, the central government would get it from the states. exactly how it was meant to work under the Articles, which didn't happen. Because the central government, the Congress would say, please, sir, may I have some money? And all the states would be like, yeah, you're getting nothing and liking it. So, Hamilton's Federalist, strong central government, taxation, a government that could create strong laws, an army and a navy. Jefferson, weak central government, no taxation or limited taxation, max freedom. Federalists, you're going to have to give up some freedoms, but in return you get the protection of a no-kidding government. Jefferson, we're a bunch of people that really don't need a government telling us what to do. If a problem comes up, we'll figure it out. And that's why these two famously didn't get along, to the point where Hamilton famously gets into duels with people. Yeah, all right. And we see some of the differences between those two early major parties, okay? So like we've already discussed, here's the leadership. Who were Federalists? Business people, merchants, people who thought they would get advantages from a strong federal government, particularly the big cities on the East Coast, New York, Philadelphia, Boston. They wanted the things that a strong central government could give. Who supported the anti-federalists, the Democratic Republicans, the South, and the people settling on the frontiers? They saw really that the federal government doesn't give them anything, so they wanted max freedom. Loose construction. The Federalists believed that they could interpret the Constitution to make it say what they want it to say, to do what they think they needed to do. The idea that it's only 7,500 words. You don't really have to read the specific words. You decide what the intent is. Democratic Republicans are, you go with what it says in the Constitution. If it's not there, it's not there. So don't make stuff up. All right? That's how they saw the Constitution differently. And we're going to see that political parties today believe some of these same things. Domestic policy, Federalists really believed in business and banks and taxes. The only way to make this country powerful was to make it prosperous. And how did you make a country prosperous? The Federalists believed you made it by being businessmen and bankers and taxation. Then you could create these big systems, you could create these big armies and navies, you could employ people, country strong this way. Democratic Republicans, Jeffersonians were like, we're a nation of farmers. All we need is our farms and our muskets. We don't need a big government. Just leave us be. And foreign policy, they supported different countries. The Federalists did not like the French Revolution. They leant more towards supporting Great Britain and vice versa from the Democratic Republicans. Jefferson famously was an ambassador to France, really believed in the French, really believed in this idea of revolution. Jefferson famously says we should have a revolution every 19 years. We should throw out our Constitution and rewrite it every 19 years. Why?
Because times change.
Times change and people change. Why should you just take something that's 230 years old and say, okay, that's my government, I guess I got to follow it? Jefferson would argue that no, every generation should throw the Constitution away and write another one. Now, I think he realized that was impractical, and he never did it. But he would argue that revolution is important, times change, keep changing it. The Federalists really believed in a more stable, more powerful government. All right, and we'll see the parties change over time. We're not going to get really into the details. We got these parties in there called the Whigs. Yes, it says Whigs. But the way the parties change over time is the Federalists turn into the Whig Party. Whig with an H. The Whig Party basically ends in 1854 over one big issue. Do you know what the big issue was that kills the Whig Party and creates the Republican Party? Look at the time frame and the name. The big American issue During this time frame and this name, Abraham Lincoln, what was the biggest problem in America in 1850s to the 1860s?
Slavery?
Slavery! Awesome. The Whig Party falls apart basically over the issue of slavery. Some Whigs were pro-slavery, other Whigs were anti-slavery. This new anti-slavery party, led by Abraham Lincoln, comes to be, and it's going to be named the Republican Party. On the other side, the Democratic Party, started by Jefferson and the Anti-Federalists, they lose that Republican part and then they just become the Democratic Party. This really is formed by Andrew Jackson in the 1820s. And Andrew Jackson was famously anti-big government, famously anti-bank. He tries to shut banks down, tries to shut taxation down. And the parties become what they become today. So the Democratic Republican Party becomes the Democratic Party of today. Over some time, we're talking a good 200 years, the Federalist Party becomes the Whig Party with an H. That becomes the Republican Party, and Republican Party comes to be over one key issue, and that issue is slavery. Remember, as soon as Abraham Lincoln gets elected in 1860, the South's like, it's over. The South is Democratic. The South is pro-slavery. In 1860, the famous guy, Abraham Lincoln, gets elected to be the Republican Party candidate and president. And at that point, the Democratic South is, it's game over, man. This Lincoln guy is going to take away our rights. He's going to take away slavery, and we fight the United States. 1863.
Oh, secession?
The secession of the South and the Civil War. Excellent job. All right, so again, read your electronic book or your paper book if you have one for details. We explained it though. Democratic Republican Party becomes the Democratic Party. The Federalist Party becomes the Whig Party, which becomes the Republican Party. And the biggest thing you need to know about that part of party history, and the thing that would be on the EOC, if we were taking one, but we're not anymore due to COVID-19, I guess it brought one good thing, you don't have to take your EOC, is the creation of the Republican Party comes about because the Republican Party becomes the anti-slavery party, which is the single biggest political issue in the United States in the 1860s. It splits the country in half, and we fight our long, bloody war under the leadership of Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party.
So, like, if Abraham Lincoln was, like, such a symbol of, like, anti-slavery, but he had slaves, right?
No. Washington had slaves. Jefferson had slaves. A lot of our founding fathers had slaves. Abraham Lincoln did not have slaves. If we remember Abraham Lincoln, where did he come from? Did he come from the South? No, he came from the Midwest, Kentucky, Illinois. That was a region that did not have a lot of slavery, particularly Illinois. Abraham Lincoln also was he rich or poor? Do you remember?
Poor.
He was poor. So Lincoln grows up relatively poor in a free part of the United States. He does not grow up as a slavery advocate. Now, was Abraham Lincoln somebody who thought African Americans were equal to white citizens? No, particularly when he was younger. We would call Abraham Lincoln, especially in his younger days, as a racist. He didn't believe in slavery. He felt slavery was wrong, but he did not believe that African Americans were equal to white citizens. That's going to change over time through the Civil War, but Lincoln was anti-slavery. Good questions, though. So the things we remember about Lincoln, the biggest thing is going to be the Emancipation Proclamation. He frees the slaves. He's the one that starts America down the path of the 13th Amendment, which ends slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gives African Americans full civil rights, and of course the 15th Amendment, which gives the vote to African American men and women, or men only?
Men only.
Men only. When are women going to be able to vote?
Like 1965 or something.
1920.
Oh.
Not quite that long. But yes, women aren't going to vote for a long time.
I thought 1920 was only white women.
No, all women with the 19th Amendment, 1919, 1920, all women get the right to vote.
Okay.
So remember, African American men only get the right to vote in 1870. Women get to vote 1920. It's a shame. So long for women to get the right to vote? Yeah, terrible. We'll give you some resources here. There's a link you can click. If you don't already know, political parties had symbols. The symbol for the Republican Party,
Elephant?
elephant. Symbol for the Democratic Party,
Donkey.
donkey. You're going to hear a lot of stories about how these ideas come up. The donkey symbol is as old as Andrew Jackson. His enemies taunted him and they said, "You're a donkey, basically you're a jackass." He, instead of being angry about it, kind of takes that on. He's like, "Yeah, I am a donkey, I'm stubborn and I'm tough." So the donkey stays as the symbol of the Democratic Party. The elephant's a little stranger. Most people say the elephant comes out as at least popularized by this political cartoonist called Thomas Nast. He would continuously use the donkey and the elephant to represent these two parties. So when you see the donkey and elephant today, that's where it comes from. Two political parties basically own the presidency forever. And as you see, they do alternate over time. All right? So not only are the Democrats the donkeys, they're typically represented with the color blue, with the red as Republicans. So you see, you don't see third-party candidates owning the presidency in there because they don't win. And you see, it's not completely even, but it alternates over time. I do want to point you here to this big blue stretch. Apparently there were Democrats as president from 1933 to 1953, a long period of time. Does anybody remember that Democratic president who was elected to 4 terms of office? Led us through the Great Depression and World War II.
Was it Roosevelt?
Roosevelt, good job. And because of Roosevelt, we do amend the Constitution. The 22nd Amendment says, president, you can only have 2 terms of office, 8 years. Because you keep electing a person to president, and eventually that person can become basically what?
Senile.
Well, that too, but I was looking for dictator.
Okay.
So our current Constitution, the 22nd Amendment says, president, you only get 2 4-year terms. 22nd Amendment, good to go. All right, but there are third parties, no kidding. You have to look for them. You may not know much about them, but in our political system, we do have third parties. One of the famous ones for a long time today is the Green Party. Abby, do you have any idea what the Green Party really stands for?
Like environmental health?
Absolutely. One of the big things that the Green Party has is its platform, or all the beliefs they have is they're big into environment. We have the Libertarian Party. Does anybody know what the Libertarian Party is all about?
Prioritizing individual rights and limited government.
Sure. The short version of what the Libertarian Party believes is you should basically have no government at all. They believe in the smallest possible government. In here we have the Marijuana Party. What do you think they believe in?
Legal weed.
Legalizing marijuana. Exactly. So do you see these parties winning big elections? Do you see them becoming president? No. Can they sometimes possibly draw votes away from one candidate to the other, or the other? Maybe helping one of the major party candidates?
Mm-hmm.
That can happen. All right, so third parties. Some third parties we'd call single issue parties. For example, the Marijuana Party, their big thing is what?
Just legalizing weed.
Legalizing marijuana. More famously, the Prohibition Party. Do you have any idea what the Prohibition Party was about?
Like stopping drinking?
Stopping drinking, exactly. The Prohibition Party was a single issue party and they were all about making alcohol illegal. Did that ever happen in the United States?
Yes.
Yes, it was called the Prohibition. The Prohibition Party never won major elections, but it influenced the two big parties to where in 1919, the United States, yes, made drinking and alcohol illegal. Could you imagine that in our world today, where alcohol is completely illegal? Some of your parents would struggle with that. But yes, the Prohibition Party, single issue party, and famously, that only lasted for about 20 years. The United States said, not even that long, 13 years, the United States said, yeah, let's start drinking again, and did. Why? What were some of the big problems with Prohibition?
It was a big source of money in the United
It
States.
was a big source of money.
And people were doing it illegally anyways.
And people were doing it illegally anyways. So people were going to drink. So who provided them alcohol typically? Nice people or
Speakeasies?
speakeasies run by
Criminals? Or
gangsters
yeah.
and criminals. Yeah. So just like the illegal drug trade today is basically run by gangsters and criminals, alcohol was run by gangsters and criminals. People realized that wasn't good. Big business wanted drinking back. Individual Americans wanted drinking back. So they said, yeah, that was nice. We tried it. Didn't work. And Prohibition was abolished. Some third parties are focused on ideology. Like in here, we talk about the Communist Party of the United States of America. There is a Communist Party of the United States of America, and it has existed for a long period of time. Is it very small? Yes. But they are really focused on this ideology of communism. Can you explain communism a little bit?
Like the separation of government and like businesses, or like sharing everything equally.
Yes. In communism, the people and the government own all the businesses. So there's no private business. It's not, Steve, I run my own company. That's our system in the America called? Starts with a C.
Capitalism?
Capitalism, perfect. So our system is capitalism in that private people own businesses. Communism is the exact opposite. Government owns all the businesses.
And socialism is the people own all the businesses?
Socialism is like communism, but it's kind of a communism light. Communism is socialism, where the people or the government owns all the businesses, and then communism adds basically, usually a rigid authoritarian dictatorship that runs it too.
Okay.
These are important to know, and please think about communism and socialism, and research those terms more, and maybe talk to them about your family. Because people will say socialism is communism. That's not quite true. So not everything socialist is communist. All right, we won't get any. We might get further on that later. Other third parties form around a strong leader. For example, the Reform Party in the 90s around this guy, Ross Perot. Ever hear of Ross Perot? He was a billionaire businessman. He has enough money. He's like, oh, gee, I'm going to run for president. And he did. And he became a third party candidate in the 90s. And he actually did pretty well as far as third parties go. I think at one point he got up to 18% of the vote, which is big for a third party. So did he ever get presidency? No. But some people will say he took the presidency away from the Republican candidate because some people who typically voted for Republicans voted for Ross Perot and lost that guy the election. Third parties have huge disadvantages. They don't have people, they don't have money. Huge disadvantage. Like I told you earlier in the year, it's time for everybody to realize this. What makes the world go around?
Money.
It is money. If you're a political party and you don't have money, that means you don't have people, that means you don't have support, that means you can't buy TV and radio ads, can't make cool websites, you can't drive around the country on the bus, can't handle people stickers and buttons and all that stuff. So you need that money. Third parties don't, so it's hard for them to get any kind of real support. All right? Third parties even struggle to get on a ballot. So if a state's going to have an election, who's automatically going to be on the ballot?
Democrat and Republican.
It's always going to be a Democrat, always going to be a Republican. If I'm Steve of the Civics Party, I usually have to go to the voting office and try to get on the ballot, and usually the registrar of the vote is going to say, give me a petition with 10,000 names on it, and we'll put you on the ballot. And that can be hard for a third party because they don't have people or money. And then I go knock on the door and I'm like, hey, sign my petition because I want to run for mayor and my party is the U.S. Civics Party. People have never heard of me. Are they going to sign my ballot? Maybe, maybe not.
So what would you say is like the biggest third party in America, like today?
So most people will say the independent party is the biggest third party. The problem with that, though, is the independent party sometimes is people of all these other parties. All right? The ones you typically hear about as third parties, you'll hear independent. But of the other big parties, you will hear Green Party is still pretty big. Libertarian Party is big and getting bigger. And everybody else is super small. Like the Communist Party of the USA is minuscule. There's a Socialist Party. Some people say there's still a Whig Party and there's still a Reform Party, but those parties are very small and minuscule. But I would say probably the biggest identifiable third parties in the United States today, Libertarian and Green.
So like with the single issue parties, some of those single issues, like especially like the weed thing is a good example, that falls under like category, I would say, like Democratic people. So why wouldn't they just identify as a Democrat and strongly believe that
That's
it should be
another thing
legalized?
that kills third parties, particularly these single issue parties. So if I am the marijuana party or the Green Party, what happens is the big parties look at your issues and they're like, I'm going to steal your issue. So the Democratic Party tends to be more pro-marijuana legalization. The Democratic Party tends to be more pro-environment. So if I'm a Green Party politician, I'm like, the Democrats are stealing my issues. So if I'm going to try to appeal to people, and I'm like, hey, join me in the Green Party, somebody's going to say,
That's already
yeah,
covered.
aren't you really just a Democrat? I'm going to join a Democratic Party. Am I going to join the pro-marijuana party? No. I'm going to be a Democrat because it's a real functioning party with support, and
They still hold those beliefs.
they still
Yeah.
hold those beliefs. Awesome point.
Miss Cannon, if you're in the building, please come to the front office. Miss Cannon, if you're in the building, please come to the front office.
So party beliefs become a party's platform. Think about it, you stand on a platform. Your platform is your beliefs. So if you want to know what a party believes in, you ask about their platform. And you can look it up. The parties publish their platforms. Matter of fact, try that. Google Democratic Party platform, Republican Party platform, etc. So in this slide, we have some examples. We're going to talk about some generalizations because every party is made of millions of different individuals. Are they all going to agree about everything? Absolutely not. Is every Republican going to believe in everything the same way? No. Same with every Democrat going to believe in everything the same way? Absolutely not. And what you're going to find is, on the right, we have conservatives who tend to be Republicans. On the left, we have liberals or progressives tend to be Democrats. But guess what? There's a spectrum in between. So they meet each other sort of in the middle. In the middle, you have moderates. So does a liberal or moderate conservative Republican believe in what a conservative Democrat believes in? Almost you can't tell them apart. Ferocious right-wing Republican is going to look a lot different than a way liberal progressive Democrat. But as you get towards the center, they look more and more the same. Does that make sense? So if we were doing the EOC, you'd definitely get one or two questions about what's a typical Republican platform or belief and what's a typical Democratic platform or belief. On this slide, you'll see some of the things there. Are these set in stone? No. Are there a variety of ways to believe in this? Yes. But typically, let's talk about Republicans first. They are conservative. which means they don't like change. They like things how they are or how they used to be. They believe in small government. People can take care of business on their own. They believe in low taxes because you should have a small government. Conservative Republicans believe that the government shouldn't be in your life. If you're struggling with your health, your job, or something else, it's up for you and the community to take care of that problem and fix that. All right? Conservative Republicans are typically more pro-traditional values, more pro-traditional marriage, more pro-traditional ideas about religion. Conservatives tend to be more pro-gun with less restrictions on guns and gun laws. Democrats, more liberal, more progressive, more open to change. What do Democrats believe in? Bigger government to help fix problems. Bigger government with bigger taxes to take care of people. It's not up to community to help people out. It's about the government to help people out. If I can't afford health care, should I just die, or does the government have some role in helping to provide me with health care? These are typical progressive, liberal, democratic platform points. Democrats are more open to new ideas about things like marriage, so they're more open to things like gay marriage than a conservative Republican would be. Government is bigger, so a Democrat would say it is government's job to have more restrictions on guns so there's less crimes or less shooting. So a Democrat probably doesn't say nobody should own guns. No, that would be almost only the rarest far left Democrat. A Democrat would say, well, there should be stronger requirements on registration and maybe you shouldn't own high capacity weapons and things like that, okay? So those are traditional party platform beliefs. Any questions on that, Abigail?
No, sir.
And since it's a spectrum, sometimes those differences can be really small. So again, a liberal Republican may look a lot like a conservative Democrat and can be hard to tell the difference between the two. So you'll see most of the times the parties like to stay in the middle. Why? Because most of the Americans are there. Really. Most Americans tend to be generally moderate in their political beliefs. They're not way over here or way over here. So the parties, not always in all things, but the parties have to look at that moderate middle to attract those Americans to their party there. Any questions about that?
Well, if the elections are like back and forth, Democrat, Republican, and that's like a pattern, won't some of the laws or like new ideas put in place by that party that's in government just be reversed by the next person that's in a different party? And so like wouldn't things just go back and forth? I'm just asking, like, if those views from both parties never really like agree, won't things just like never really
Stabilize,
stabilize?
it's constantly
yeah. And
changing.
yeah.
Less than you'd think. Some of that obviously does happen. When you have a Republican president come in with a Republican Congress, are laws going to change? Sure. Perfect example, healthcare. The Democrats in the Obama administration, they created the American Health Care Act, usually known as Obamacare. As soon as the Republicans and President Trump come in, what do? They try to change those health care laws, okay? But do they change every law all the time? You find that not only is that probably impossible, a lot of times they just don't, all right? And remember, the Supreme Court is sitting above all this, deciding what laws are constitutional or not. So you have those checks and balances. Even though the presidents change and the legislatures change and they're going to try to change laws, and they will at times, it's all under the watch of the Supreme Court to make sure it's all constitutional. And then you weren't here, Abby, but our students, when we taught the legislative branch, Congress comes up with a lot of ideas for laws, but like the Supreme Court gets lots of cases, lots of appeals, but only do a tiny number of them.
Mhm.
Any Congress comes up with 10,000 bills, but they'll only pass 50 laws. So Republicans will come in and come up with all these bills changing everything the Democrats did, but they're only going to be able to pass a few of them. So it's not this constant cycle of everything changing. You're going to only see certain things change, but mostly you have stability. That makes sense?
Yes.
Is it all a little more complicated than I just explained? Yes, but yes, you've identified it. It's not like, oh my gosh, we got a Democratic president, the country entirely changes. And then, oh my gosh, we elected a Republican, everything changes. No. Okay, can you tell what party somebody is in the majority by where they live in the country? And this map would say, typically you can. So, where do Democrats live, Abby?
North, usually.
They live in the Northeast and the,
Northwest.
the West Northwest. And this is typically fairly stable. Does this change? Sure. Are there going to be some swing states that sometimes are Republican and sometimes Democrat? Sure. Like where's Ohio? Ohio, for example, a swing state, changes. Sometimes Florida is a swing state, it changes. But there are Democratic majorities, typically in the Northeast, in the blue, and the West, the blue. What are the red states? What are the Republican majority states? As you can see, the South through the Midwest. This big sweep of Republican states. Why is that? Lots of reasons. Lifestyle, heritage, history, and more than anything else, where do you get your political beliefs from probably? More than anybody else.
Your family.
Probably your family. So if I grew up in Milton, Florida, 70% of the people in Milton are Republicans. Is it strange that I become a Republican? No. If I grew up in Los Angeles or San Francisco, everybody out there is a Democrat. Does it make sense I'm likely to become a Democrat? Sure. So something else you want to think of because it matters. These are, of course, the 2012 and 2016 presidential elections. So those presidential candidates are going to be trying to win those important states with those important electoral college votes, which are kind of almost segregated by region and by party. When you see this online, click these links to learn more on political symbols, political platforms, and third parties. These are your review questions. Use the online resources, your electronic book, or Google if you have to answer these questions. And please post them into the notebook or chat, or if you can't figure out how to use those on Microsoft Teams, send it to me on email. Oh, and last and certainly not least, what party do you believe in? Take this online test. Answer the questions, and it's going to say you tend to be more Democrat or you tend to be more Republican. Maybe it'll surprise you. Give it a shot. Have a good day.